Welcome to Sliders and Wings, a podcast about the TV show Sliders
and the TV show Wings
and all the other forgotten TV shows of the 90s.
I'm Valerie Temple.
And I'm Rachel Cox. Hi, Val.
Hey, Rachel.
Oh, how was your day? You were doing homework.
I was doing homework all day. I was writing a paper for my class on human resources.
What's your paper about?
It's about remote work.
Oh, man. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
You know, it sounds like it's a mix.
I mean, that's how I feel about it. There was this grace period when no one needed to go in the office between the internet being invented and today. And then it was like, oh, wait, we didn't have to be there.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people are quitting.
Yeah.
Now, because they're like, you know what? I really liked not having to go to that place.
I get the New York Times magazines that my parents discard. And one of the most recent ones was about work. The whole issue was about work. One of the articles was about the whole anti-work Reddit page. So there's this group that just ballooned in the past year called anti-work on Reddit. And it kind of imploded because the person who was the moderator went on, not Tucker Carlson, went on some other Fox News show to just represent and didn't do such a good job. Mm-hmm. And then everyone was mad that that person was representing them. They're like, okay, so you don't want to work. Like, what do you want to do? And they were like, maybe teach like philosophy or something.
You're like, that guy's not speaking for me.
So work, I don't have much to say about work.
That's good. I'm jealous.
But we are here to talk about a very formative show for me that I was shocked you had never seen. The Outer Limits from 1995.
I destroyed you. I smashed you into pieces and threw you in a dumpster. How can you still be here?
I'm here because it's necessary for me to be here, which is more than I can say for you. You had your chance. You've been a father for 15 years now, but you haven't been a good father. You haven't even been a good husband. Too many late nights at the office, too many golf games on the weekend.
Stay away from me.
You were never here when your family needed you, but now your family has me. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Someone to help out around the house, someone to help with the family. Fathers have been failing their families all over North America. As a result, society has become more dysfunctional, more chaotic. Something had to be done. I am that something. I represent control, discipline, respect, values you forfeited or never had. You'll never attack me again, Jerry, because if you do, if you try to dispose of me in any way, I will dispose of you permanently.
There is nothing wrong with your television. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are now controlling the transmission. We control the horizontal and the vertical. We can deluge you with 1,000 channels or expand one single image to crystal clarity and beyond. We can shape your vision to anything our imagination can conceive. For the next hour, we will control all that you see and hear. Experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the deepest inner mind to the outer limits.
Not the 1960s one.
Which I also have not seen.
No, me neither. And it's very hard to find information on the Outer Limits 1995 because the original has better SEO, I guess.
I guess.
So I have to search the Outer Limits 1995 to find anything. I didn't realize that the show was originally on Showtime. I thought it was always a syndicated show a la Xena or Hercules because I had only ever seen it on WB or CW where it was on 10 o'clock at night or something when I was in college.
I also cannot believe I've never seen it. It really hits a lot of the markers of what I like.
I was doubly shocked to watch the first one, which was called Valerie. Not the first one that you and I both watched for this episode and saw some boobage. And that I had never seen on the CW or WB. And I didn't realize that there were softcore elements. And frankly, I'm just a little perturbed by it. it's just not necessary. I mean, I always thought that they were fine the way they were. And then there's some TNA in there. And
yeah, it was on Showtime and it was the 90s and they were like, let's do it. Let's show those boobs.
well, they aired from 95 to I think 2002, and it did 5 seasons on Showtime and then 1 season on the Syfy network.
The Roku channel had 7 seasons listed.
So The Outer Limits originally aired on Showtime and in syndication between 95 and 2002. It's an anthology of distinct story episodes, sometimes with a plot twist at the end. The revival series maintained an anthology format, but occasionally featured recurring story arcs that were then tied together during season finale clip shows. And we encountered that almost right away. When we picked the show, I emailed you 3 episodes that had stuck with me that I just wanted to force you to relive with me.
You're like, these have lived inside of my brain.
And then I went and watched none of them.
I watched one of them.
I watched none of them because I was like, well, I've already seen them. And then just other ones caught our eye because Greg watched with me. There was one called Valerie about the robot named Valerie that we had to watch, who was tall with red hair.
Yes. And the other woman in it was named Rachel.
Oh, right.
Played by Nancy Allen. And at one point, the Valerie robot is choking the Rachel character. I was like, whoa, what is happening?
It's a dream I had. One of the ones I wanted you to watch was with a young Ryan Reynolds. And when I went to go watch it, I realized that it was a 2-parter from different seasons. So the one that I told you to watch, it immediately started with a recap and we were all confused. They do 1 episode, that's the first part, that's in 1 season. And the next season, they do kind of a second parter. So they were kind of experimental, which is the one that you watched, the one with Dana Ashbrook. So that's the one where Dana Ashbrook, who played Bobby Briggs on Twin Peaks, he wakes up and he's human. And it turns out he's the only human on Earth because all the other humans have been destroyed. And these 2 robots decide to bring back the human race and they genetically create him.
It actually starts with him birthing out of this exoskeleton womb. And he's covered in all of this Nickelodeon gack stuff. And Heather Graham is one of the robots.
Oh, right. So what did you think of Outer Limits with fresh eyes?
I absolutely loved it.
Did Aaron watch it?
Yes. He actually told me about, I guess in the 2000s or something, they released DVD collections of The Outer Limits, where instead of a full season, it would just be 6 episodes on a theme. The themes were Aliens Among Us, Death and Beyond, Fantastic Androids and Robots, Mutation and Transformation, Sex and Science Fiction, and Time Travel and Infinity. Now, would you like to guess which one Aaron got from the video store?
I forgot them already.
The one on sex.
Okay.
He got Sex and Science Fiction, which actually included the Valerie episode.
Oh, God. The most memorable thing about this show is the intro. There's a cold open every time. And then it goes to this very VR5 looking 90s graphics, actually kind of like the X-Files intro.
With less text, because instead of text, they have a guy talking.
So this is what he says. There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. This is the part that's the most memorable for me. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits. The reason I read that is because when we watched it for the first time, Greg said this could be a TV show intro that summarizes QAnon, their mission statement.
Yeah, that's really funny. I do know that opening kind of monologue is at least similar to what the original series did as well, because my mom was always quoting, we control the vertical, we control the horizontal.
Yeah.
But I did notice in that opening credit sequence, which really does look like just a montage of 90s screensavers, I did notice there is a naked woman in it.
Yeah.
So it's really telling you what you're going to expect. Aliens, robots, naked ladies.
X-Files with a little TNA. And then the best is at the very end, there's a coda where it'll pan out from the final scene and the guy will talk again as a voiceover. And it's always something that is summarizing the story. And the one for Valerie is, the pursuit of technology exists to make human life easier and more pleasurable. But once such forces intrude upon the most intimate parts of our lives, will we then forfeit our very souls?
Yes. Yeah, it's always like some sort of summary that involves the moral of the story, but the monologue is very dramatic and like doomsday heavy. Humanity is in the balance here if you don't get your shit together is pretty much the moral of every episode.
So we watched Lithia, and this one was great. All men on Earth have been destroyed in this great war, and this guy was cryogenically frozen. It's played by, who's the guy who's the dad from Firestarter? I'm talking David Keith, and he's like a sexy, rugged army guy. And what happens is not what you expect. You expect them all to just be like super horny for him, but only one is super horny for him. And she's the one whose boobs you see. What actually happens is he kind of pushes them to kind of get into a conflict with the neighboring group. It snowballs into violence, and then they put him back into cryogenic freezing. And then it turns out that these guys were released on purpose to see what would happen if men were released back into the population. And every single one was a disaster. Then there's a double twist where the old woman who leads the whole group, there's like an early mention that she had this guy that she was in love with, but he went off to war. He was the one. She recognizes him, but he didn't recognize her.
She's so old.
And that was great. Lithia, highly recommend. You see a few boobs. A sexy lesbian shower scene.
Oh, hello. I did watch the one with Tom Arnold that you told me about.
Oh my God.
Did you watch it?
Yes.
It was so good.
Two of the ones that I watched were robots.
I had watched 3 episodes and all 3 episodes were robots. And so I was like, I have to watch another one. And I was really worried that that next one would be a robot one, but it was aliens. So.
Okay. But that one is funny because Tom Arnold can't help being funny. Everything he does is just hilarious, makes you laugh. So that's about a guy who just loves to work, and he's just always working, and his family's like, you're never here. So he gets this robot. Gideon basically slowly insinuates himself into the family and becomes the dad. And then in the very end, all the men who have Gideon robots are basically become the children of the robots.
The last sort of montage is family dinner where the robots are all at the head of the table and giving a prayer. The fathers have been relegated to sitting to the side. Before dinner starts, Tom Arnold comes to the table, sits down, and Gideon's like, you're not wearing a tie. Tom Arnold's like, oh, sorry, it won't happen again. But yeah, that one is a real scathing indictment on fatherhood. At one point, Tom Arnold is starting to get jealous of this robot while his family is responding positively to interacting with this robot. They're all doing really well and achieving things, but Tom Arnold feels like this robot is taking his place. So there's this confrontation, and the robot is like, I represent control, discipline, respect, things that fathers have been failing on. Whoa.
When did you first realize you liked science fiction?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or like, when was your first memory of like, oh, this is something else?
Probably Star Trek Next Generation.
Mine was Quantum Leap. My cousin showed me. I was aware of Star Trek. Star Trek and Star Wars in my mind were blurred. It's like people going through stars. But I loved all the different stories and alternate realities. And that was really, really interesting to me as a teenager when I first saw it. Oh, it's not always fantastical. Sometimes it looks very pedestrian. It looks like what you're used to, but there's a twist. I love that. That's what I liked about Sliders. Is this the same world? What's different about it? You don't know. It'll like sneak up on you.
I watched an episode that had sort of a Sliders element to it because I was reading about the Outer Limits, and I found out that Amanda Plummer won an Emmy for an appearance. And so I was like, I gotta check out that episode. It's a season 2 episode called A Stitch in Time. And Amanda Plummer basically plays a time vigilante. She's this professor who has created a time machine, which she has been using to go back in time and murder murderers before they get a chance to murder. There's another story on top of it where there's an FBI agent played by the woman who was Ensign Rowe in Star Trek Next Generation, Michelle Forbes. She's an FBI agent who is on this case and finding all of these links between these murders across decades. These murders spanning 30 years are all with the same gun, and she's putting it together while Amanda Plummer keeps going back in time and things change as she eliminates somebody.
Amanda Plummer was in a really good episode of Tales from the Crypt, which is also very similar. It's a little more gory or goofy, a little more comic booky, and it's shorter.
Funny. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, there's one with Amanda Plummer where she's kind of like a Black Widow or something. Like she has sex with a guy on their wedding night and then kills him. Highly recommend. But anyway, this is a very special show to me. Found it in college and you'd be like, oh, Outer Limits is on. If you catch it, it was just so exciting.
I totally get it. And I'm actually sort of mad that it was not part of my consciousness until now. I would have been having so much fun like all this time. How did I miss this? How?
A little bit from that academic article I found about it. The Outer Limits property was kicked around for years. Attempts were made to resurrect it in the early 80s, but then MGM fell into troubles. With the resurgence of both media science fiction, thanks to the success of shows like Star Trek and Babylon 5 and MGM, the notion of reviving the Outer Limits resurfaced. With the proven popularity of shows like HBO's Tales from the Crypt, the Showtime cable channel snatched up the new series. Although the literature of science fiction has a huge spectrum, the audiovisual and now virtual media have always emphasized special effects and visceral impact. Science fiction lends itself towards tales that frighten even as they weigh issues and teach. If there's a significant single heritage of the Outer Limits, it is a penchant for noisy, melodramatic, and sublimely satisfying morality plays. Yeah, the challenge really comes back to telling stories that grip us as human beings. The things that scare you and me don't change. Attitude, talent, good scripts, determination, and heritage seem to weigh in the show's favor. They got a lot of big actors to do the show.
Yeah.
This is not like Red Shoe Diaries.
Matt LeBlanc twice, and that's it.
Pilot episode had Beau Bridges and Lloyd Bridges and then some other Bridges.
Every single episode has somebody that you're interested in seeing, and you might not have seen in something like this anywhere else. When I was watching the episode with Heather Graham, all I could think was, wow, it's very interesting to see her like this. And also, I bet she liked being on this show because she got to play a character that wasn't about how beautiful she is. She got to play a robot who develops attachments to a human being. Surprisingly, Heather Graham is not the character that shows her boobs in that episode. And I bet she really liked that. I'm sure it gave her a chance to stretch some muscles that she probably wasn't allowed to in other projects. So
I wonder among actors if this was something they chose to do. So many of them did it. It must have been fun.
I would think so. My impression of Tales from the Crypt is that people wanted to do it because that looked like fun. Sometimes you were covered in gore. Sometimes you were murdered in a really hilarious way. You got to be a villain, like a really unlikable character. That's fun to do.
Do you think that most science fiction is just dystopia, aliens, robots, or science experiments? It seems like there is a limited amount of angles.
Well, there's also speculative fiction, stuff that's more like The Handmaid's Tale.
I'm about to embark on a new Ursula K. Le Guin book. It's called Always Coming Home. It's framed as an anthropologist's report on the Kesh, survivors of ecological catastrophe living in the future Napa Valley. I guess 19 of her books are considered part of the Hainish cycle, and I guess they don't have the same characters. It's books that are in this universe where humans have gone out and colonized other planets. So Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed are both in the Hainish cycle, but they're not really related. Someone on Instagram reminded me of this book that I had completely forgotten about. This is a new segment called What You're Reading. This is the only Stephen King book I've ever gotten through, and I've read it, I think, 2 or 3 times. The Eyes of the Dragon.
Yeah, that was the first Stephen King book I ever read.
Yeah, me too, but I'd never read any others.
Really? That's crazy. I've read so many Stephen King books.
They were so long for me at that age. I think I read half of Needful Things and I couldn't get through it. 1,000 pages long.
I remember in ninth grade, my English class, we were supposed to read 4 books per semester or something like that. I remember going to my teacher and saying, well, the Tommyknockers is 1,200 pages. That should equal 4 books, right? Can I just read this book? And she said yes. So
score. You're reading books on your own, you're fine.
Yes, exactly. I remember, though, Eyes of the Dragon being sort of disappointed by it because it was my first Stephen King book and I was expecting horror, and like that's his one historical fiction type of book. I was like,
yeah, it's supposed to be magical fantasy because his daughter doesn't like horror, and so he wanted to write something she could read.
That's nice.
I thought I could read it to Oscar, and then immediately there was long passages about how this guy didn't like laying with women. I found myself skimming over a lot of stuff.
Anti-sex in The Outer Limits and in books.
So for adjacent TV, Tales from the Crypt is an obvious one. Can you think of anything else?
Well, I mean, of course, The Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah.
The Twilight Zone is less sci-fi heavy. And I think that's why my mom, she always preferred The Outer Limits to The Twilight Zone because she liked the sci-fi aspect of it.
They did a Twilight Zone remake that's on Paramount Plus. I watched one of them and I can't really say whether it's good or bad. I don't think it got a very good reception.
I remember it coming out. Is Jordan Peele involved in it somehow? Yeah. I think, yeah. And so there was that promotion angle. Jordan Peele, knew something from Jordan Peele, and then I never heard anything about it ever again. The modern incarnation of this show, I think, is Black Mirror.
I really do like Black Mirror. The only Black Mirror I didn't watch was that one where you're supposed to choose your own. At the time it came out, our Roku was too old. It couldn't do it, and I never got around to doing it.
I bet it's cool. I was just too traumatized by the first episode I watched, so I've never gone back to Black Mirror.
That actually kind of creates a extra category of sci-fi, which is techno horror. Technology going bad, not just robots, but general technology. For Accent Corner, the show's filmed in Canada. So everyone except for the guest stars are usually heavily Canadian.
For Accent Corner, I just wrote down robot voices. My favorite being Gideon.
Yeah, he sounded British.
He had a deep voice. It was authoritative, which I think goes with what that robot's prime directive was. I will take over this family.
Speaking of robot voices, you don't have an Alexa, right?
No.
We were gifted one years ago, and we've always had it in the kitchen, and we've used it for playing music and setting timers. That is it. But it is starting to creep me out. It'll flash yellow when there's a notification. And I've learned early on that these notifications are not interesting at all. It'll do this once a month, and it makes no sense because it should be notifying me of those types of things all the time. But the other day it was flashing notification, and I have to ask it what it is, otherwise it won't stop. I said, Alexa, what's the notification? And they said, you recently purchased something from Amazon. Would you like to leave a review? I was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm making dinner and you just start flashing with this urgent notification to leave a review for one out of the 100 things I bought. It was just really strange.
You're like, leave me alone. Get out of my life.
She does this thing all the time. I have no idea how to make her stop. When you ask to play a certain song, if it's not available, a lot of the stuff is under the Amazon Unlimited. If it's there, she'll always give the spiel. With Amazon Unlimited, you can listen to millions of songs, and would you like to? It's only $6 blah, blah, blah a month. Would you like to do it? Every single time.
Is there any way I can skip this?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get my CDs out or something. What's your Mad Magazine?
With Outer Limits, it makes you want to count the minutes.
That's a lot better than mine, which is Audi lint. There's more of a visual pun because I kept thinking outer, any Audi, and then limit, lint.
I have to credit Aaron with coming up with that, by the way. I was like, outer limitations? What is it? What's a good one? He just pulled count the minutes right out of the ether.
He's a natural.
He really is. This is really his specialty. So
the most 90s.
Oh man, there's so much. It's very 90s.
In the Tom Arnold episode, the girl's wearing the midriff. It was so strange. She decided she was going to lose her virginity to her boyfriend, and she puts on this kind of Boyz II Men type song.
And the song is about losing your virginity.
But then she like immediately changes her mind, and Gideon the robot comes in and saves her. And then from that second on, she becomes this like goody two shoes.
Yeah, she's like joins choir. She's wearing like a leather skirt with this black halter top that split up the middle, so her midriff is also revealed. I also had noted a very 90s thing from that episode, which I thought was really funny. At one point, the mother is sitting at their kitchen table writing out checks and putting them into envelopes to send them out. And I was like, this is a world where you can get a robot for your house, but you have to pay bills by mail.
They could not have even conceived of PayPal or Venmo because they didn't have smartphones.
And then also, I watched an episode starring Jeremy Sisto. AKA Elton from Clueless.
Yeah.
This is the episode that I watched because I was desperately trying to find one that wasn't a robot. The description was a man leaves town to join a cult. And I was like, that can't be robots. Halfway through it, I was like, I think it's robots. Oh no. The first scene of the episode, they're about to leave town. They're all getting on this school bus to go off to the wilderness. And there is this man in like a monk's robe, and he's got like a scepter. And before they're allowed to get on the bus, contraband is being removed from people's bags. The guy in front of Jeremy Sisto, they pull out like a carton of cigarettes. They're like, you can't take these to your new life. And then they get to Jeremy Sisto and they're going through his bag and they pull out just a stack of CDs. They're like, you can't take this. The guy says, we'll be making our own music. He's got this stack of CDs, and all I could think was, is one of those CDs a Cranberry CD? Left it in the quad in Clueless.
Well, he didn't have them in one of those little travel packs where you just have the CD in there.
No, it was a stack of jewel cases.
So the thumbs up, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, this might be near the top of the best dramas.
I actually wrote in my notes that this is a perfect 90s show, at least for me, because I think it is good enough to keep you interested. It's good, it's well produced, but it's also goofy enough to be fun to watch.
Greg had a real hoot. There are a lot of things to laugh at.
Yes, there are a lot of things to laugh at, but the Amanda Plummer episode was absolutely excellent. The one with Bobby from Twin Peaks, I think that was the worst episode I watched, but for the most part, I thought the quality was pretty high. And also, all of the amazing guest stars are really exciting. You're like, oh, I'll check this one out with Thora Birch. Let me see how that goes. And also, it being an anthology style really helps, because if a particular episode is a dud, you aren't going to judge the entire series on it, right? Not everyone's going to be a winner. Like, I always say that I'm going to watch more episodes, but I actually think I really will watch more episodes of this. It seems like a show where I could just put on one. Hey, it's the end of the night. Let me watch an Outer Limits episode.
I am Googling how to watch Tales from the Crypt, and I'm very disappointed. It was on HBO, so why isn't it an HBO property?
I don't know.
Not on HBO Max. You have to pay for it on Prime.
Rachel, that is why I own every single season of Tales from the Crypt on DVD. I do.
All right, good. Well, I'll wait till it comes available. The good thing about Outer Limits is that it's all free on Roku channel, and the commercials are pretty minimal.
I feel like I got through one or two episodes without even seeing a commercial, so it was very easy to watch. And it also has the original Outer Limits on there as well.
Yes.
So if you're interested in watching that for a compare and contrast.
Do you feel like science fiction has suffered from everything being science fiction now?
Yes.
It does seem like half of all the content now has some sort of, Greg is always like, another robot thing.
Yeah, it's all sci-fi.
Even the normal stuff has robots in it now.
But then I also think that the people who are making these sci-fi tinged things aren't actually interested in sci-fi. It ends up being not very good. I mean, I think why the Outer Limits is good is that they had people who really like sci-fi working on it. And they adapted really good stories from very well-respected sci-fi authors. George R.R. Martin was the basis for the first episode. They did Stephen King. They did Harlan Ellison. They were really genre enthusiasts. And I think you can sort of tell when someone isn't. I mean, I think that's why the new Star Trek movies, I think, are bad, because I think the people making those movies don't really like Star Trek and don't actually understand why Star Trek is good. They're like missing the whole point.
You said it. What you watching?
Well, I haven't watched much just because I've been hard at work. But I did watch a kind of Twilight Zone-esque movie that I thought was pretty good on the Criterion Channel, starring Harry Belafonte. It's called The World, the Flesh, and the Devil.
Ooh.
From 1959. And it's about a guy who is a miner, not a youth. He actually mines underground. and he is trapped underground for a period of time. The opening sequence is him at work underground, and there's a cave in and he can't get out. He's been hearing people digging, and then at one point it all goes silent, and that's when he sort of freaks out. He's like, I guess I have to get myself out of here. Finally climbs to the surface, gets above ground, and there's nobody. It turns out that while he was underground, the entire planet, everyone in the world died due to radiation poisoning. So it's a last man on Earth, Omega Man type story, but it has a further element, which is race, because of course he ends up meeting two other people, one being a young woman, and she's kind of falling in love with him. He's like the last man on Earth, and he's resisting it the whole time because even though they're the last people on Earth, racism is still a concern, you know?
Yeah.
Even with 0 people on the planet, he is still worried what the consequences are going to be if he starts a relationship with this woman, which is really depressing to me.
Well, I saw the movie that just came out called All My Friends Hate Me. Have you seen the trailer? It's British.
Never even heard of it.
Recommend. It's also, as Pete Davidson would say, a short-ass movie.
Yeah.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, baby, the best. Say what you will about Pete Davidson. He is right as rain.
I mean, I've been on here complaining about long-ass movies. Yeah, I'm just glad someone is paying attention. Simon Rex comes in the song and recommends all the Ernest videos. That was funny.
Yes.
So I probably can't even talk about this movie, All My Friends Hate Me, but you can rent it on Amazon for, I don't know, $7 or something. Any movie that starts like this, I will watch it. A weekend at a country estate in England. Friends getting together at a country estate in England for one of the friends' birthdays. What happens?
What happens?
I love it. Anything that's called the celebration or the party or the anniversary. I mean, I'm there. Give it to me. Yeah, anything where people get together and something goes down. So this one does keep you on the edge of your seat. I highly recommend. It's a lot of twists.
Ooh, that's exciting. That sounds exactly what I'm looking for right now, because I just don't want to think at all, and I just want to have a fun time.
I think I'm going to watch the new crime show Outer Range. I understand that I just said that everything has become sci-fi and this is no exception, but I also can't resist it. Josh Brolin is in it, and Lily Taylor, a rancher fighting for his land and family who discovers an unfathomable mystery at the edge of Wyoming's wilderness. I have a theory, which is that around the time that the first season of True Detective came out, there was so much true crime, so much horror. And I feel like we hit a point where like there were no more crimes to be done. Like the crime in True Detective, the whole time that show was going on, I was like, what could this possibly be? What could it be? It's child rape. And that's what it was. And I feel like now they've been like, all right, let's just make everything about robots.
I mean, you probably like that better, right? You're not a fan of child rape.
No, I'm against it.
Hot take.
Oh, I watched one other thing that I do recommend. Greg and I watched it last night. It's like a little mini, kind of like a documentary. This guy named Brad Trammell, he has a YouTube channel. He creates art videos, but it's a survey of millennial aesthetics, and it's called Pastel Hell, the definitive guide to millennial aesthetics. And I think you and Aaron would really like it.
Ooh.
There's one really interesting part. He touches on cancel culture without explicitly talking about it. So he says that when people are posting on Instagram, they're showing stories. So they're trying to show their life as a story in which they're the protagonist, but no one in real life has an antagonist. So the antagonist has to be some fictional person or group. So that's why it's like Putin's evil, da da da. Trump is evil, da da da. There's a bad guy of every week or month that is the antagonist of each person's individual story, so that they can be the Luke Skywalker,
the hero
of their story. And I just thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Basically, cancel culture exists because of Instagram.
You know, I believe it. For you to elevate to the hero status, you need something to be fighting against.
Right. You need to prove yourself virtuous. So none of these antagonists are real. They're just scarecrows that are propped up and that just keep switching out. And none of those issues are actually resolved. They just are there to show the protagonist as being virtuous. Deep thoughts.
I also watched one movie that I got from the library through a very meandering Google related to Grace Under Fire, a horror movie from the early 90s called Mikey. And it stars Brian Bonsall, who played Andy, the little kid on Family Ties. And the reason that's related to Grace Under Fire is Quentin played Alexander Worf's son on an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and so did Brian Bonsall.
As long as it makes sense to you.
I got there, but it's like about like an evil kid. He keeps getting adopted and murdering all of the families that adopt him.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's pretty pure, pretty straightforward. He's evil. He kills people with bow and arrow. He beats people with a bat. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but I think you would like it because it is exceedingly 90s. He's wearing so much Bugle Boy. It's out of control. It's just a delight to watch.
All right. Well, this has been Sliders and Wings with Val and Rachel. You can email us at slidersandwings@gmail.com, or you can see Sliders and Wings Pod on Instagram.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Good night.